Welcome to another video by mt4gadgets.com. This is a very important video. If you have already been coding or programming for some time, definitely you know what variables are. But if you are just starting out and you haven't programmed before, variables and understanding the concept of variables is probably one of the most important things as a beginner. Starting with the definition, and this is not limited to MQL5, this is for any type of variables and any programming language. Variables are named containers for storing data. These data can be of different types, like numbers, text, Boolean values, and variables allows you to program your code and your custom tools with flexibility. Again, you need to see variables as containers for data, and these containers have a value that can be changed. And also these containers have a name or a label that allows you to identify them and recall them in your code. Sometimes there are questions coming up from beginners asking, do we actually need variables? Do we need variables to code? And the answer is no, you actually don't need variables to code or to have programs running. However, if you don't use variables, you are making your life much, much harder and your program very rigid in terms of flexibility and adaptability. Because yes, you can avoid using variables, but you will need to use these values that otherwise you would put into the variables. You would need to put these values wherever they are needed in the code. And in case you need to change this value, then you need to change all of the instances of this value in your code. While in case you use a variable, you have the variable in your code a number of times, and if you want to change the value of the variable, you only need to change it once. You will see that in an example, but just keep in mind, using variables, it's almost a non-negotiable. You will need to use variables at some point, especially creating effective and useful tools. How to use variables? There are probably three main steps for variables or actions that you can perform on variables. Number one, you need to declare variables, which is just telling the software that a variable exists. Then you need to initialize the variable or assign a value to the variable. And then you can use the variable. So that is when you call the variable to use the value inside of it. Variables are also associated with a data type, meaning when you have declared a variable of a specific data type, you cannot change the data type of the variable later on. For example, if you declare a variable which is a string, that variable will need to remain a string for all of the duration of your code. Now, enough about theory. Let's go and let's write some code. Okay, we are in a meta editor and we can create a new script just to test variables out. Let's call a script text. We don't need any of this. And we don't need any of this for the purpose of this code. I like to indent in this way, but you can use the way that you prefer. I like it cleaner. So we talked about variables. In this case, the first thing we need to do is declare a variable. And with this software, let's put a comment in there, calculating the risk amount based on percentage. So this is a script, and this is the predefined function to run scripts. So if we need to calculate the risk amount based on a percentage value, we need firstly to have the account balance. So say we have $10,000 balance in our Forex or broker account, and we want to risk 1% per trade. That 1% will be $10,000 times 1%, $100 per each trade. So the first thing we will need is the account balance. To do that, we can create a variable to store the value of the account balance. So to declare a variable, we need to specify first the data type the variable is, then give it a name, account balance, and while we are in the declaration, we can also assign the value, which in this case there is a function to retrieve the account balance, which is account info double and account balance. So this function will return the current account balance of your account, save it into a new variable of double type named account balance. So remember again, a variable is a named container. This is a named container of a specific data type containing a value. So this we can call it as declaration and value assignment. And we said we want to do a 1% risk, so we need to also calculate or declare a risk variable. Let's call it risk. And at this stage, we only declare it. We don't give it any value. So basically, the software at this point knows that there is a risk variable, which at the moment is empty. It doesn't have any value. So when we want to give it a value, we say risk equals account balance times 1, which is 1%, divided 100. So the software is giving risk the value from the formula account balance times 1 because it's 1%, divided 100 because it's 1%. And if you want to print the value, print risk. So this is very simple. How you how could you improve this code? I see one very easy opportunity to improve the code, especially around the percentage, because what if you want to change the percentage risk that you want to calculate your risk amount on? What if you wanted a 5% there? You need to change the value in the formula. It's really never a best practice in calculation to have hard-coded values like multiplier or addition. Usually it's always recommended to add a variable instead of the hard-coded value. So in this case, what we could do is at the beginning of the code, we could say int, we have risk percentage equals 1. So this is another variable. We gave it a name, we gave it a value, and we gave it a data type. And risk will be based on account balance times risk percentage divided 100. So in case you want to change the percentage of risk, you can just change it there, or 5%. Or you could even have it parametric as an input when you load the tool into MetaTrader. So hopefully you understand now what variables are. We gave the definition, we showed how to use variables, how to declare a variable and assign a value to it, and then how to retrieve the value in the variable. Again, this is a very important concept, so I think get familiar with it. You will need to work with it in all of your programs. Hopefully this video was useful. I hope that you learned how to use variables, or at least getting started with variables. If you haven't already, come and check us out at mt4gadgets.com, and I'll see you soon.